Hi everybody, are you ready for the magazine chapter? There's a lot to cover, so here we go. You ready? Okay, I'm going to start with a trick question. Which magazine has the highest circulation? Well, it used to be TV Guide, but we don't really need TV Guide anymore. The magazine with the highest circulation is actually Modern Maturity, mainly because it goes to everyone over 55 and it's free. In fact, here's a list of some of the magazines with the highest circulation, and there might be some surprises on here. I was surprised that Game Informer was quite so high. A lot of people assume that Time and Sports Illustrated are going to be near the top, and they're actually not. Actually not. There weren't very many magazines in the beginning of America for two reasons. Number one, the literacy rate was still very low. And number two, the distribution system wasn't in place. We didn't have the infrastructure to deliver magazines across the country. So there weren't very many magazines around at the very beginning. But by 1850, since the roads and the railroad were in place and the literacy rate was increasing, the number of magazines in the country increased. The first really successful U.S. magazine was the Saturday Evening Post. It's considered a general interest magazine, meaning that it tried to have a little bit of something for everyone. The covers were normally done by Norman Rockwell, and they also had serial stories. So if you read something in one edition, you'd have to buy the next one to find out how the story ended. Reader's Digest is pretty much the last general interest magazine that's still around. Its readership is dying off, so its circulation numbers are dropping. It is printed in 160 countries, though, and it has a very interesting architecture. We'll talk about that in class, how every magazine has a different specific architecture, and Reader's Digest is small, thick, and has a flat binding. Also, just for trivia purposes, there are usually about 30 stories in every Reader's Digest, and that means there's one for every day of the month. Life magazine established photojournalism. That is the concept of using pictures to tell a story. It was huge in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Now, if we want to look at pictures, we just get online. They tried to resuscitate Life magazine. It didn't really work, sadly, but the app is fantastic. The app is fantastic. National Geographic has very specific architecture. There's always the yellow frame around the cover. It has a flat binding, and it's not typical magazine size. It's a little narrower and a little taller. It's also printed on super high quality paper because of the photographs. Something else about National Geographic that I like a lot is that it has ads like in the first 10 pages and the last 10 pages. Once you get into the meat of the magazine with the articles, there's no ads. And I think that's kind of a neat idea. These are stats for magazines. If you want to click on the link, please feel free. A couple terms about magazines that I want you to know by the end of this week. Split run editions is a term that magazines use when they specifically do not give every subscriber the same edition. For example, Time magazine might run a split edition based on geography, so that someone in St. Louis might receive a different Time magazine than someone in New York. The purpose for that isn't necessarily because they want to include different stories, but it's mainly so that the ads within the magazine can be more targeted. We're not interested in seeing ads for restaurants in New York, so they give us a special edition with maybe some local ads. They can also target certain demographic groups with split run editions, meaning that if they know that you are a doctor or a lawyer or have an enormous income, believe me, they know, they might send a version of the magazine to you that has really high-end product advertisements as opposed to the magazine that the rest of us would get. So they have a real specific way to target people based on geography and demography, and those are called split-run editions. Magazines narrowcast. I mean, besides the internet, there is no medium that is as specific as the magazine industry. If you go to, gosh, you can't go to Borders anymore, Barnes & Noble and look at the magazine racks, it is amazing. It is amazing. And I'm going to bring a lot of really weird magazines to class so you can see examples. Even in St. Louis, the libraries serve a magazine called Boat Woodworker. Like, just crazy, crazy random magazines. But you might think that the magazine industry is going to die. Well, the fact that it's narrowcasted so specifically is the reason it will survive. Because if you sell quilting supplies You're not going to advertise on TV. You might not advertise online, but if you can find a spot to advertise in a quilting magazine, that's a perfect spot for you. So because magazines are so narrowcasted, they probably will do just fine against the internet. So here's something kind of interesting. Which category of magazines is the most financially successful? Now, we're not talking about circulation, but we're talking about which category can charge the most for their ad space. Well, it's the women's magazines, and these women's magazines are referred to as the Seven Sisters, mainly because they're all more alike than they are different. They typically have the same type of stories, same type of ads. I actually think it's very hard to tell these magazines apart. The reason that these magazines can charge so much for ads is because their readers are women. And who makes 99% of the purchasing decisions for the home? It's the women. Women who work full-time still make most purchasing decisions for the home. Men get to pick their own trucks, their own insurance, their beer, and their razors. Women pretty much make every other purchasing decision for the home. That's why these women's magazines are so financially successful. You've probably heard of the term the magalog. What that is a combination of a magazine and a catalog. J. Crew perfected this because their catalog doesn't look like a catalog. It looks more like a magazine. It's a wonderful combination of the two, promoting a certain lifestyle. And oh yeah, you can buy their clothes. There's also a term called brand magazine, and that's when a brand actually publishes its own magazine. This is the Red Bull Bulletin. So this is going to be a magazine full of articles that exemplify the Red Bull lifestyle. So it's a great way for brands to maintain brand identity and maintain current customers. Advertorials are the places in magazines that look like articles but are actually ads. And this kind of thing is my favorite example. You know, every Cosmo, every Glamour will have a page like this of things that you have to have. And if you notice, in the very small print at the bottom, it will say, this is an ad. But it looks like editorial copy, but it's not. So once you become media literate, you really notice advertorials. Their presence is everywhere, not just in magazines. Okay, so can advertisers affect the content of a magazine? You bet. You bet. Say, for example, that you work for Time Magazine, and Time Magazine's #1 advertiser is General Motors. Are you going to write anything bad about General Motors in your magazine? Of course not. Of course not. You don't want to upset your advertisers, right? So depending on who is financially supporting the magazine through the advertising purchases, your coverage might be very different. Something to think about. You know, when you're consuming news or consuming magazine content, think to yourself, what am I not being told because of the ads that are purchased in this medium? How important is the cover of your magazine? Extremely important. You're looking at the most popular Vanity Fair cover ever and the most popular Bon Appetit cover ever, for obvious reasons. Why do magazines do special issues? Well, that means that you have to buy them. They want you to buy them. Some of the most famous are the People magazine special editions that they do. Of course, ESPN magazine followed Sports Illustrated's lead, and they did the body issue. Of course, you always have the swimsuit issue in February. Time magazine always does commemorative issues at inaugurations. They also have the special issue at the end of the year for the Person of the Year. Now I'm going to get on a soapbox a little bit. Okay, are you ready? The question here is, what do magazines add to our culture? And I'm going to suggest that magazines play a big role in this idea of the beauty contest of life. If you check what 17 Magazine's goal, it says that it wants to help teenage girls become the best they can be, right? But really, if you look at 17's website, it looks like being the best you can be means having shiny hair, no zits, great straight white teeth, being skinny, and pleasing a guy. It's very interesting once you start looking at the editorial content. Like, these articles came from one 17 magazine. So how are these articles helping a young girl become the best she can be? Well, the idea here is to please the guy. This ad, for example, was from a 17 magazine, and it's an example of objectification. where a woman's body is treated like a thing. Here she's even wrapped up like a Barbie doll. I'm really not even sure what's going on in this ad. We'll talk about it more in class, but it's an ad for the shoes, in case you were wondering. A lot of times women are shown off balance with long, hard things in between their spread legs. Women are shown in positions of inferiority or lack of control. What I want you to do now is look at the next few slides I'm going to show you, and I want you to ask yourself a few questions. What do the men look like? What do the photographs of the men look like? What are the men doing compared to how the women are portrayed? Okay, so here's David Beckham. I don't know who that is. That's not Armani, but you get the idea. Now look at the photographs of the men in the ads compared to the photographs of the girls. You should notice some similarities. What it amounts to, in effect, let me go through these one more time so you can get another look. What it amounts to, in effect, is the concept of clowning, meaning that the women are typically shown in groups with their mouths open, having a good time. The men are typically shown alone in black and white photos, independent and showing no emotion. Now, I'm not saying that looking at these ads is going to teach you anything in particular, but I am saying that if you look at these ads longitudinally for a period over 10, 15 years, is it possible that some of this might teach you ideas about gender roles? That men are serious and loners and unemotional, where women, girls just want to have fun, right? So actually all of these ads came from one magazine. It's very easy to find examples of this, and I just want you to be aware of it. I'm not saying that this is going to, make you sexist and crazy. I just want you to be aware of it. Fair enough, right? Okay, so here are some fun examples of how you advertise the same product to two different audiences. For example, here's a Rolex ad. There's Roger. I kind of like Roger. All right. The ad on the left is an ad for Rolex that appeared in Sports Illustrated, obviously because Roger is an athlete. The ad on the right goes into really specific details about how a Rolex is made, and that ad appeared in Popular Mechanics. Okay, do you see how it's the same product, but they use a different ad to cater to that specific audience? Here's another example. This is from Rosetta Stone. You've got the farm boy wanting to meet the supermodel. You've got the dad wanting his son to learn, I don't know, Chinese. Okay, so the ad on the left appeared in Rolling Stone. The ad on the right appeared in Forbes. So the ad on the left is targeted more towards younger people. The one on the right is targeted towards parents. Here's a candies ad, and I know that this is old and cheesy and dated, but it is my favorite example, so bear with me. This is a candies ad that appeared in 17 magazine. I want you to notice her body language, the position of her legs. I also want you to notice Sugar Ray's cheesy grin. Here's the exact same ad, but changed for Cosmo, in which her body language is the same, but now she has a large, hard, phallic object heading straight for her privates. This ad is in Cosmo. This one's in 17. So Candies knows exactly what it can get by with each target market of the magazine. Here's another example. This one was in 17. Same stupid grin from Sugar Ray. But here's the one that was in Cosmo. So now we have addition of a little butt crack and some condoms on the counter. The product is the same. The ad is different because the target market is a little bit older. Here's one that appeared in Cosmo. This one was in Ebony. Here's one that appeared in, I think this was maybe Ladies' Home Journal, one of the Seven Sisters. So this ad is for Zappos, and it's appealing to the practical part, right? But this one was in Rolling Stone because it's an ad that references music, but the same product. See how this works? Now here's, I think, my favorite example. This was in Time magazine. So the target market here are older people, probably parents. Your son mentions enlistment. Now look, it's plain, it's white. There's a picture of a mom with a son. Advertising life in the military. Here's an ad for life in the military. This appeared in Rolling Stone. It says that there are Navy SEALs in this picture, but you can't see them. So you would never use this ad to try to sell parents on a life in the military, because this ad would remind parents that life in the military could possibly be hard and dangerous and risky. But to the reader of Rolling Stone, this is exactly how they want to advertise to them. So the product is the same, the advertising techniques are completely different. In class, I'm going to show you some ads that are not intended for you. And it's very strange the first time you see an ad that's actually not targeted towards your target market or towards your target demographic. It's kind of strange, actually, but interesting. So this is our magazine chapter, and look forward to showing you lots of cheesy examples in class. Okay, have a good week, everybody.